Howdy, folks. We're going to go over Chapter 5, Fire Prevention, Life Safety Education, and Fire Investigation. And I've decided to change it up a little bit rather than do the review questions or the information that's in the yellow-headed boxes in the margins, which are still very important for you to go over because you'll see that information on your quizzes. I'm going to do key terms, and you'll find key terms for each chapter in the chapter table of contents. All right, just look on the right side of the very first couple pages of your chapter, and you'll see where the key terms are. Okay, so I think that's a better way to go about trying to get you guys the information you need. All right, so Chapter 5, key terms, starting with arson. Arson is defined as a crime of willfully, maliciously, and intentionally starting an incendiary or fire or explosion to destroy one's property or the property of another. Arson is decided by statutes and jurisdictional decisions. All right. So arson. People start fires for many, many reasons. The biggest one is thrill seekers. People light fires so they can report to fire and be a hero. Sometimes people light fires for monetary gain. They might be having a problem paying for their big giant Dodge Ram pickup truck with all the bells and whistles on it, and they just can't afford the $900 a month payment, so they burn the truck for the insurance, or you burn your business, or you burn your house for business. That's monetary. Sometimes people commit arson for revenge. They'll burn somebody out for whatever reason. They're angry with them for whatever reason, and they do that. So that's arson. A code. A code is a collection of rules and regulations that has been enacted by law in a particular jurisdiction. Codes typically address a single subject area: mechanical, electrical, building, or fire code. So that goes hand in hand with your building departments. They'll have all those codes, electrical codes, and so forth. And any construction or renovation of a particular resident or business or occupancy, if you do electrical work, it has to meet code. If it doesn't meet code and there's a fire, and the investigators will determine that it didn't meet code, and that will cause problems for you down the road. Fire hazard. Any material, condition, or act that contributes to the start of a fire or that increases the extent or severity of fire. So a fire hazard could be, your neighborhood is not the best in town and it's getting a little bit run down, but people that live there still have pride of place. They still maintain their yard, but there's somebody down the street that doesn't take care of their lawns and their shrubs and so forth, and the stuff starts to die off. And now you have a big, ugly hazard in your yard, and somehow a fire gets started. Maybe it's arson, maybe it's accidental, who's to say? But that is a definite fire hazard. You could create a big problem in a neighborhood. You could burn your own home if you don't maintain your yard, your backyard, your alleyway. You could burn the neighbor's home. You could burn fences. So fire hazards are something that we can deal with on the engine company level. If you're out and you've been called to take a look at somebody's overgrown yard, you can issue a warning to get the yard cleaned up before official action is taken. Fire hazards also come into play in the wildland. If you have been up to the foothills, I'm sure all of you have, up around Fresno, Madera. When CAL FIRE, the jurisdiction up there, every spring people go around, firefighters go around and they inspect their area. And what they're looking for is defensible space. And once they gain access to the property, they have to have permission to come in and take a look at the property to do a survey. They can have the homeowners mitigate any fire hazards, piles of brush, debris up around your house, stuff up underneath your deck. Things that are going to exacerbate a fire. If a fire came through your area and you hadn't taken care of business and you had dried brush and grass up to your house and tree limbs hanging over your roof, things like that, a roof full of pine needles, that's a definite fire hazard, which would make it very difficult to protect your home in the event of a wildfire. Fire inspector. Fire personnel assigned to inspect property with the purpose of enforcing fire regulations. Fire inspectors in some departments are not sworn individuals. They're not badge carrying members. They're strictly an inspector. It's actually a good job. It's a way to get into the fire department in some places. Fire inspectors are very important. They may inspect businesses. They may inspect new construction. They may inspect the wildland. It just depends on the jurisdiction that you're working in. Fire investigators. They can be public, which would be a city, a county, the state, federal investigators, arson investigators, or they can be private sector individuals tasked with discovering the origin and cause of a fire, as well as who may be responsible or liable for a fire. So in the private sector, those folks are generally working for the insurance company. These days in the wildland especially, it's very difficult to get fire insurance because there's been so many major fires in the state that people are being dropped left and right. So these fire inspectors from insurance companies, they're going to go around and be sure that you're following the letter of the law. Fire marshal. The highest fire prevention officer of a state, province, county, or municipality. In Canada, fun fact, they're known as a fire commissioner. So your fire marshal, you've probably heard of the state fire marshal in California. They're the be all end all of the fire service in California. Okay, moving right along. Okay, fire prevention. Part of the science of fire protection that deals with preventing the outbreak of fire by eliminating fire hazards through inspection, code enforcement, education, and investigation programs. So your fire prevention folks, it starts at the ground level on the engine company level with school programs, with grass lot inspections, with the wildland fire inspections, going around to the homes and making inspections. There's people that work in the Fire Prevention Bureau that arrange for school presentations and so forth, informational presentations for the general public. Fire prevention is also responsible for code enforcement and investigation, and those are your fire investigators, your arson investigators, who may be a local municipality. They could work for the state fire marshal's office as an investigator. They could work for the city of Fresno, city of Clovis. So they all have to abide by the same rules and regulations, the same laws. And the investigation techniques are basically the same wherever you go here in the state. And it is a non-police entity. It's strictly fire department. Fire prevention is a division of a fire department responsible for all of the above. So in CAL FIRE, you go to Fresno Kings unit, out to Sanger, out to headquarters, and they have their own building, their own setup where they have their own secretaries and so forth. It's where they do all their work. That's their base. Fresno Fire has the same thing, and Clovis does as well. So there's a term here called pre-incident planning. The act of preparing to manage an incident at a particular location or a particular type of incident before an incident occurs. So you pre-plan. You go out and you look at it, for instance, a target hazard. St. Agnes Hospital would be a target hazard. And Fresno Fire Department has pre-planned what are we going to do with St. Agnes Hospital if there's a major fire at the hospital. And that includes not only suppression of the fire, but how do we evacuate the patients? What are the hazards associated with the fire? And we all know hospitals have oxygen and various flammable chemicals in the building that need to be mitigated in the event of a fire. So all of this stuff is pre-planned, and it's drilled on regularly so that we know, or they know, how are they going to deal with a fire at St. Agnes. Then there's a pre-incident survey, an assessment of a facility or location made before an emergency occurs in order to prepare for an emergency response. Okay, So that's St. Agnes Hospital. Pre-incident planning would also cover things like major wildfires, areas where wildfires are prone, areas of heavy traffic, Interstate 5, for instance, when it's up in Northern California, it goes through the wildland. They have plans in place for dealing with major incidents off of the interstate. A pre-incident survey, I just went over that. Target hazards, part of a pre-incident planning, shopping centers, big shopping centers, hospitals, theaters, nursing homes, schools, anything where there's large numbers of people with the potential for a large loss of life, they are considered a target hazard. A big truck stop with fuel storage, a refinery down in South Fresno, pipelines, things like that. Those are all target hazards that have to be addressed in order for the department, whichever department you work for, to deal with them efficiently. Okay. A standard is a set of principles, protocols, or procedures that explain how to do something or provide a set of minimum standards to be followed. So as you guys progress through your career, as you get hired and you progress through your career, you will have to meet standard. Standard for firefighters, standard for engineers, captains, battalion chiefs, and so forth. You have to meet a minimum standard in order to hold those jobs. And you get that by training. Formal classes in the CAL FIRE system. Firefighter 2s and engineers are called, they're JAC employees, Joint Apprenticeship Committee. It's a statewide committee. It takes you through a 3-year apprenticeship. You start at the beginning. After your fire academy, you have a task book. You have various things that you have to accomplish in that task book within 3 years, and you're tested regularly. So that at the end of those 3 years, when you're a journey person, firefighter 2, or engineer, you have now met standards. Let's see. So that's basically chapter 5 for you guys. Again, read thoroughly the whole chapter. Read the highlighted items in the margin and go over your review questions. And as always, I'm available for questions. If you have them, you can email them to me if anything I've said isn't clear. Don't forget, tomorrow morning we have our meeting at 0900. We have our Zoom meeting. And Friday you'll have a double quiz, okay? And I will make announcements on that later in the week. Again, as always, in closing, I'd like to make sure that everybody's okay. You guys are all following the social distancing, and you're only venturing out when you have to. And if you do have to go out, you try to stay away from other folks, that you're taking care of your family and yourselves so that we all get through this mess together. Because even though I've never met any of you guys in person, we're all in this together, and I want to make sure that you guys come out of this on top so that in July or so, I guess, well, there's my wife. she's feeling the quarantine. Let's put it that way. That when this is all over with, I'll see you guys at the fire academy. Okay, it's very important. So continue to take care of yourselves and have a wonderful Easter Sunday. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow at 0900.